We walked out of the UFO warehouse and hadn't gone far when suddenly the surrounding environment changed drastically. In an instant, we found ourselves on a main street in their planet city. To my surprise, the planet was nothing like I had imagined. Everywhere I looked, there were incredibly tall buildings, some so tall that you couldn't see the top. I thought to myself that it wasn't practical to build them so long without breaks in between to allow pedestrians and cars to pass through more easily. Why would they build them like this? Everything on the main street was very orderly and simple. Not only were the buildings exceptionally tidy and minimalist in design, but even the roads were impeccably clean and flawless, paved in a blue hue made of a material that seemed like plastic. Along the roadside were many strange and unusual plants, all arranged in neat rows. I didn't see any cars or any form of transportation. There were no wires in sight, nor could I see any planes in the sky, and of course, the UFOs were nowhere to be seen, probably moving too fast to be visible. There were no shops, hotels, or any commercial buildings either. Many of the towering buildings, much like the UFO warehouse, had virtual walls, while some were clearly real structures, though not as tall as the virtual ones. The virtual buildings had areas on the walls in different colors and sizes, matching the positions of doors and windows, leading me to believe these colored areas represented the virtual doors and windows. Some buildings had no doors or windows at all, and others were floating in the air without any support. Many of the high-rise buildings were inverted triangles, some so tall they seemed to be in space. Some buildings had huge, possibly linguistic symbols floating above them, resembling English, with no apparent connection to the buildings themselves. At that moment, I realized I was truly on an alien planet, and it couldn't possibly be anywhere on Earth. From what I had seen in movies, no country on Earth looked like this. The last bit of hope I had, thinking I might still be on Earth, was completely shattered. At this moment, the standard male voice that often echoed in my mind suddenly switched to the voice of a very sweet and extremely enchanting little girl. It could be described as enchanting to the core, which I later learned was synthesized by their artificial intelligence, not a human voice. Welcome, Brother Chen from Earth, to the Guoker Planet system for a tour. The Guoker GIW is dedicated to serving you. In terms of our current understanding, this girl's voice would be equivalent to our mobile network's AI customer service, and their GIW is akin to our Earth's internet. However, my initial anxiety eased a bit, adopting a mindset of when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Suddenly, a three-dimensional virtual hologram appeared before me, showing an extremely beautiful girl with somewhat sinister features, who continued with her extremely enchanting voice. The Guoker Planet you are about to visit is a highly virtualized world and also a lascivious one. Why lascivious? Did I hear that right, or misunderstand? I wondered at that time. It is known in the universe as a planet of sexual gaming. After returning from this planet, I truly understood this point. I am Kevin, your private service agent from the Guoker GIW, and I will do my best to provide information services to you, the visitor from Earth, regardless of the situation. You will receive my intimate and private services. I am your lovely, sweet. As she spoke, her body shrank and moved closer to me, her clothes melting away until the hologram seemed to enter my chest and disappear. Strangely, I felt a sensation on my body and even seemed to smell a young girl's fragrance. Was this not purely a virtual image? Feeling as if I was naked, I instinctively looked at the white mist-like virtual image around my waist, which reassured me a bit. Why did she say Guoker is a lascivious planet? Is it common to introduce one's home in such a way? I instinctively touched my ears, wondering if there was a translator inside. I found nothing. I wanted to look in a mirror but thought it might be difficult to find one or they might not have mirrors, so I dismissed the idea. I noticed that the sunlight on this planet was particularly brilliant, but slightly cold, not warm on the skin. The scenery was exceptionally vivid, and visibility was excellent, making even distant objects appear clear. The colors of the plants were mostly green, with many shades between green and yellow, but noticeably more vibrant than those on Earth. Later on, I learned that their planet also revolves around a luminous star, receiving starlight energy on its surface that is clearly less intense per unit area compared to the sunlight we receive on Earth. The plants, having evolved over a long period, are vividly colored, likely to enhance the efficiency of photosynthesis. This could also be due to the very low levels of dust and particulate matter in their air. They cover the ground completely, with the roots of the plants at the surface boundary wrapped in special materials. In urban areas, the ground is covered with a material similar to plastic, which is an upgrade from our concrete on Earth. It's extremely durable, somewhat elastic, and produces very little dust when rubbed against other materials. There are no deserts or barren lands in their wilderness. The vegetation is lush. The banks and dams of rivers are all covered with man-made structures. Not only do they prevent dust from dispersing into the air, but they also have a dedicated dust absorption system that operates continuously. Their industries use artificial field scanning for cold processing, emitting no smoke, with most industrial activities taking place on another industrial planet. Moreover, their 10 billion global population shares a single mode of transportation, the global movement web. By submitting a movement request, one can appear anywhere on the globe within a second. Thus, there are no cars, trains, or planes to stir up dust from the ground. Their environmental conservation is exceptional, almost to an excessive degree. However, they warn me that for Earthlings, living there for an extended period could severely degrade immune functions. This is of little concern to them, as their medical technology is highly advanced and can easily address this issue. The streets are not crowded, with people walking in a relaxed manner, alone or in small groups. Some walk about a meter above the ground in a cruising posture without carrying anything. I also noticed that these people were clearly male or female, all about 1 meter tall, of a similar age, and all very beautiful and young, resembling our primary school or kindergarten children. There were no elderly or infants to be seen. Seeing their crowd, my first impression was like seeing scenes from our kindergarten at the end of the day. These people are all very delicate, with extremely smooth and soft skin, flawless, and seem to have a diffuse reflection rather than a mirror-like one. Later, I learned that their appearance can be remotely modified using their GMW and GIW, much like how we use beauty filters on TikTok now. What I saw of their appearance wasn't entirely real. The women's clothing seemed to blend seamlessly with their bodies, with simple styles, usually exposing their arms, wearing tight-fitting tank tops, very close-fitting, as if the exposed upper body was just colored in, and paired with a small skirt-like garment for the lower body. Their attire was very revealing, typical of summer attire. Some people had patterns on their clothes that kept changing, like our television screens. Almost everyone walked barefoot. Women's hair generally flared outward, in spirals, while men's hair was usually tightly compressed against their heads, in various vibrant colors. I also noticed a phenomenon where many people, regardless of gender, had a three-dimensional hologram floating beside their shoulders or above their heads. The contents of the holograms were diverse, some resembling small animals, some like text, some like complex machines, some unidentifiable, and some patterns constantly changing. I wondered in my mind, what were these floating above their heads? This is the remote virtual imaging technology of the artificial field scan. It's like a signature, a tag, a self-display, a show-off, and also represents one's personality, explained Kevin, the GIW customer service. But I still didn't quite understand and continued to ask Willie. Oh, it can be a kind of pet for humans, representing one's mood. It's variable. Today, there may be one pattern floating above, and tomorrow there may be another, Willie replied, but I still didn't quite understand. I can't understand. I can only guess that the patterns floating above their heads are just personal preferences, a way to show off, without any real use, I said. How do you find the air on our planet? Asked Soldair. It's very good. My attention shifted to the air, feeling refreshed. Your air has a higher oxygen content than on Earth, right? Yes, it's 23.18%, Soldair said. The key is the negative ions and some other gases in the air. The air on your Earth is a bit bad. We've tried higher oxygen levels before and found many organisms and bodies couldn't adapt. After repeated experiments, we determined that this oxygen content is the best. Norton faced me and said, Now, we are heading back to our place. Later on, we'll give you a detailed tour of our planet. How does that sound? All right. How far is your place from here? I asked. In terms of length units on your Earth, it's about over 10,000 kilometers, Norton replied. Then how do we get there? Do we take some form of transportation or fly there in a UFO? No one answered me. Norton raised his hand and made a sudden gesture. Suddenly, I heard the gentle and beautiful voice of the Information Network customer service, Kevin, in my ear. Request for teleportation attachment approved. Type, humanoid. I felt a lightness in my body, then quickly returned to normal. Suddenly, I heard the same phrase again. We are home. Over 10,000 kilometers in such a short time? It was so easy to get to their place? What kind of transportation did they use? Was it even more advanced than a UFO? I didn't see anything, just Norton waving his hand, and my mind was filled with questions.